Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And it's interesting. One of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is that so many businesses are happy with being average or even mediocre, right? And so we're going to be talking with a guest today who is going to talk to us about how we're not mediocre. We're not average. How the heck do we get to really be all stars? So please join me in welcoming Scott Rusnak to our program today. Welcome, Scott. How are you doing?
Deb, I'm doing great. And as we talked before the show, I've just come off a 4-day ski trip and a morning mountain bike ride. So I'm pushing the limits, and I know you are as well.
I love, and it is Friday as we're recording this and the short week, all of those things. And we're going to talk about how you schedule your time, because I was fascinated with that. But, let's just go ahead and jump in. Let me read your bio, and then we will get started on this because it's going to be a great conversation. So Scott Rusnak is an executive coach, expert EOS implementer, and a board certified coach for the U.S. and British Olympic teams. He is also the author of The Entrepreneur's Field Guide, Design Your Life Before Someone Else Does It For You. Scott has co-founded and successfully exited multiple businesses, including Schoollogic, GolfNow, HM Systems, and Tutela. Each successful transition has been attributed to the tools within the EOS framework. With more than 30 years of experience in the entrepreneurial world as a coach, consultant, and advisor, Scott helps his clients recognize blind spots and learn lessons that can only be taught by someone who has been through it all. So again, Scott, welcome.
Deb, that's quite an interesting bio. And I almost wonder if we should fix the bio in the sense that the tools of EOS have helped me in business, but the foundation of my life, I think of someone like my mother, some coaches and some mentors. I think a lot of my success is due to the fact that people believed in me.
I love
that's
it.
That's coming from a high school dropout. So there we go.
I love that. And you talk about that in your book, and I love that so much. But, let's talk a little bit more about that. How is it that you got to where you are today?
Boy, I think the biggest issue with this country is you let people in like me. I was born in Canada, and I was trying to become a professional hockey player. And pretty chilly. I was trying to become a professional hockey player or a professional cyclist.
Okay.
Neither of those worked out, and coaches, mentors, and the right people in my life pointed me to go to school. And luckily enough, it's about who you know and what not, or not what you know all the time. I was able to start a software company. It became reasonably successful. And this
you competed against Apple, really?
I've got this philosophy: if you're going to compete, you might as well go right after the top, right? Not the smartest decision, some would say, but I think it worked out okay. But the biggest thing that happened is that people in the States were like, "That's great, you're from Canada. We need to see the proof in the pudding, and we think you need to be down here more."
Ah, interesting.
And my wonderful wife back then of a couple of years, and our 4-month-old baby who didn't have a voice in the matter, I said, we're going to have to move to the States and do this properly. And about 30 years ago, we moved down to the States. We built a company out of blood, sweat, and tears to about 5,000-ish schools around North America and Europe. And it became known as Schoollogic, and had an absolute blast doing it. So that's how it all started.
I love it. And you have gone then from company to company, learning each time. And I think that is, one of the things that you talk about a lot in your book is we have to be on that continual learning curve. And you do talk in your book again about the coaches that you had and the mentors. And I think so many people in business think, I don't need that. And so why is it? And I'm a big proponent that is, if people like Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan had coaches, then coaches are obviously pretty important. They're not thinking, I know how to do it all. They knew that they had to have a coach. So, and you talk about your coaches also. So why is it important that we have coaches, and then in the business world, mentors, people like that?
Well, the interesting thing about a great coach is they're going to make sure you have a vision.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes your idea of the race you can win or the business you can compete at
Mm-hmm.
isn't exactly accurate. So they're going to poke you in the nose from time to time and question that
Mm-hmm.
vision and say, are you entering a race you can win? Are you in a business arena you can
Mm-hmm.
actually win at?
Mm-hmm.
And winning means a lot of different things to different people,
Mm-hmm.
but there's got to be a purpose to all that as well. So I think
Mm-hmm.
the coach right off the bat can say, vision, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And then number two, are you working with discipline and accountability? Now, on the business side, you could call that traction.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, and then on the cycling or the skiing side, you can say, hey, that's really putting in the reps. But then the last part, Deb, which is almost the most important part, and maybe the hardest part to obtain as an athlete or an entrepreneur, is the healthy and smart part.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a lot of people are smart, they're driven, they've got these God-given abilities, but a coach is able to say to you, are you really healthy? Are you vulnerable?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really digging in? Are you taking the right rests and
Mm-hmm.
not only getting everything you want from your business, but your life? And for me, all those coaches through my life have really helped me self-correct along
Mm-hmm.
the way.
Right. One of the things that I love about coaches is that they give you structure. And I think that's what, especially if we're on our own, or even if we're the CEO of a big multi-million corporation, we don't always have that structure. And that coach, let's even going back to pee-wee football and all of those things, it was, you will work out between X period and X period, you will eat this and this, and they really did do that structure. And then of course the second we didn't have that coach, we're like, yeah, right, whatever. And a good coach really does help give you that direction. So talk to us a little bit more about that.
So there's two sides, and I'm going to marry business and sport throughout
Yeah.
this power
Mm-hmm.
hour, if you don't mind.
Yeah, because
And we
that
can
is
talk,
who you are. Mm-hmm.
it still is. And we can talk Tennessee football later, but I'm going
No,
to bring it,
no, not Tennessee. Boo.
the one thing I find, and I'm going to bring it back to
Mm-hmm.
my role as a EOS implementer, which
Mm-hmm.
is the entrepreneur operating system,
Mm-hmm.
is we work with clients for about 18 to 24 months, and then they get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we'll go into detail on that later, but if you look at let's go to Premier League soccer, the average tenure of one of those coaches is about 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Some are gone quicker, some are gone,
Right.
some stay longer.
Mm-hmm.
They put this structure and the format
Mm-hmm.
in place so that the team gets it, they get the right
Mm-hmm.
level of success. If the coach is great and the team is great, they stick around a little bit longer. But going back to that structure, we've got to identify the unique ability of each team member.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to make sure that they're running with discipline and accountability.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to have that plan for at least the next 12 to 18
Mm-hmm.
months. So that's the structure the coach can bring. And then the next part is something I absolutely love. And to go back to the Walt Disney days, we all needed Jiminy Cricket on our
Right.
shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
We need someone to point out those
Mm-hmm.
blind spots. Because have you ever had someone take a picture of you in outfit, or you're at an occasion, you think, oh, I'm looking all great.
Yeah. Oh, I'm hot. Mm-hmm.
And you look back at the picture like, I'm actually not so hot.
Right.
And that can happen in the business arena, in the sports
Mm-hmm.
arena.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a mirror on yourself. You don't have a mirror in front of
Mm-hmm.
yourself all the time. But that coach or that mentor can
Mm-hmm.
be that person that is your mirror in
Right.
real life.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to point out those blind spots as you're moving
Mm-hmm.
along that journey.
Right. And a good coach, of course, does it in a way that is the helpful criticism, as opposed to, oh my God, honey, you put on 50 pounds. Do you not know what you look like?
Deb, can I be open and honest?
Yes.
And then hopefully you're shaking your head saying yes. So now I'm the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, with all due love and respect, I need you to think about this one thing you're doing today, or the plan, or where we're going to go. And if you do that with a gentle poke in the nose with the plan and the purpose in mind, I find you get the point across, and everyone takes another step up each day.
Right. And you talk about having a plan. And I think that is absolutely critical. I mean, let's go back to the sports analogy. People don't get into sports now to just do it, right? There is some reason why they are doing it. Maybe they're doing it to lose weight. Maybe they are doing it to make friends. Maybe they're doing it to win the Super Bowl. I am in Georgia, and so here they take football serious. Oh my gosh, and so they're doing it to win the national title. Or tennis, and I know you spend a lot of time cycling. You're not in it just to pedal around the block. You're thinking, I bet I could do that Tour de France. I bet I could, or at least I could do a triathlon or something like that. There's always a goal in mind.
We didn't prep a lot for this part of the conversation before, and I love it. Because I've met so many athletes and so many entrepreneurs. They're like, I'm going to do this triathlon. I'm going to run this half marathon or this 10K, or I'm going to achieve this in business. They achieve it. They're at the top of the mountain. They ring their bell and they're like, bing, bing, I'm done. And as a coach, I remind them that you're not done after this event.
Right.
I need this to be an infinite game with a purpose so that you're continually thinking about moving forward. And just last week, I was skiing with a dear friend of mine who's 78 years old. And he's like, Scott, I know you've got this goal for 80 countries by the time you're 80. I tell you, if you don't ski with me when I turn 80, we're going to have a different kind of conversation. Now, that's someone with that kind of perspective. The Olympic hangover is something that's real. You get on the podium or you get to Olympics.
And then what?
You're done. Mental health, all kinds of terrible things go on inside that community. So let's just call ourselves weekend warriors, and I'm definitely one now. But I do think as a coach, I've got a unique perspective with businesses and those athletes moving forward, thinking there's an infinite game. What are we shooting for that's bigger and better? So long way to answer your question, but there's an infinite game. What else is out there? And let's continue to pursue bigger and better things.
Right. And from a business perspective, it's funny because we talk about BHAGs, our big, hairy, audacious goals, right? And sometimes we make them unattainable. Well, then that's not going to work, right? I'm not going to make $50 million next year unless I play the lottery, right? And then that's probably still not going to work either. So your goals, they should be big, but they should be attainable. But how many times do we see businesses where you say, what's your goal for 1 year, 5 years, 10 years? And they go, and I tell people, it's like, if we get in the car and, look at our GPS and expect it to take us somewhere, but we didn't tell it where we wanted to go. We're just going to flounder around. We might end up in a cool place. We might end up in the lake. Who knows? We have to have those goals.
I've been in a few lakes in my life. In fact, the odd cold plunge in Tahoe is not bad, but I'd prefer to be in a warmer lake. So with that, I want to let your listeners know that I'm happy to give away all the stuff I'm going to talk about today. And one of them is something we call the Vision Traction Organizer. And this is a 2-page business planning document that US worldwide that we'll give out to people. And with this Vision Traction Organizer, and hopefully you don't mind this long soliloquy into it.
Go for it.
We get really straight on your core values. Who are you at your core? Are you humbly confident? Do you do the right thing? Do you do what you say? Then we get straight on your core focus. What's your why? And when I work with athletes or entrepreneurs, I ask them, why are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And some will say, I want to make $1 billion or 20% profit.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go back and say, well, who in your business is that affecting and your life is that affecting positively?
Mm-hmm.
Sounds like your bank account, but what about the receptionist? What about the
Mm-hmm.
gardener and all the rest?
Right.
And so when we come back to it and reframe that why around the core values and say,
Mm-hmm.
hmm, maybe I want to leave people in a better place than I found them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I want to grow this legacy. So
Mm-hmm.
when we get straight with that and the core values,
Mm-hmm.
then we can start to talk about maybe a 10-year target or
Mm-hmm.
a core target. This is
Mm-hmm.
really what we want.
Mm-hmm.
The interesting thing is a really good friend of mine who was the founder of GolfNow, and
Mm-hmm.
thank you, Brett, for involving me in that business. I remember him saying his vision was to have the GolfNow app in the hand of every golfer.
Huh.
And this was back early 2000s. We're like,
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to do that? These cell phone things don't really work. Well, thank you. Thank you again, Apple.
Mm-hmm.
If you are playing golf now, you can look up the Golf Now app on your phone if you want to play golf. Well, that was Brett's core focus.
Mm-hmm.
But when you break it down, and I'll talk about some other businesses,
Mm-hmm.
okay, so that's your core focus. Where do you want to be in 3 years?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, get straight on that. Revenue, some measurables.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you want to be in 1 year? Get your goals, everything
Mm-hmm.
straight. And then let's get really refined and talk about the next 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
So we've found as coaches within our community that if we can set 90-day priorities,
Mm-hmm.
which we call rocks,
Mm-hmm.
that our good friend Stephen Covey
Yep.
invented many, many years
Mm-hmm.
ago,
Mm-hmm.
love him to death. We can set these specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, timely priorities we call rocks for each and every person on the leadership team, and then filter that through the business,
Mm-hmm.
and then come back every 90 days and reset that based on our 1 year
Mm-hmm.
goal. We got a heck of a chance of hitting that core target.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So wrap all that up within this VTO, which again, people can reach out. I'll email them a copy of the VTO. You're going to get really straight on your vision,
Mm-hmm.
and you've got an attainable, realistic, timely way to get there. And we'll bring it back to the coach poking you in the nose from time to time going, oh, we're off track. How are we going to get there?
Right. And I love that you say we need to do it in these 90-day chunks, rocks, because I think sometimes we get so focused on the future that we forget about the short term, and the short term is where things happen. You were talking about how much snow you had. We had really, really cold here in Atlanta, really, like single digits. That doesn't happen down here. Hello, there was this little thing called COVID. All sorts of things happen in that short term. And if you can't figure out how to make it through that, then nothing else is going to happen. And so that's where I love having those 90-day focuses where it's like, okay, we're going to do this, then this, then this.
Well, COVID was really terrible for a lot of things, but I find with a lot of human tragedy or these big events, we come through it stronger. So I've got this mindset, which is a growth mindset that tells me the future is going to be better than the past. And as we were going through COVID, I was lucky enough to have my son, who was going to the University of Arizona, join me in San Diego at our home. What did we get to do? We got to talk about business. We got to talk about his school. He was online doing things. I was surfing. I was riding my bike, and I was on Zoom with my clients. And as I had conversations with my son, entrepreneurs and athletes, I reminded them that we've got a 1 year plan and a 3 year target and this big core focus. So let's not get lost in the weeds of today. Let's remember the things we've overcome and how we can break through.
Right.
And we kept running on this same rotation. And Deb, one of my core values is humbly confident, but my practice went through the roof by really talking about that mindset and keeping people in the right structure. And it was an incredible period.
Right. Yeah. Because it's that balance. If we get so focused on, oh my gosh, what are we going to do tomorrow? Then, that's not going to work. And I think, of course, the thing that we saw so much with COVID, and it didn't matter if it was the one person business or, the giant things, they had not done planning and preparation. They didn't know a lot of those things. In my earlier career, I did crisis management planning. Now, we never planned for a pandemic, right? I mean, now we did plan for something like September 11th. because that was about the point in time where I started this. And but we would plan on things like, what happens if you cannot get into your office for a day, a week, a month? And this was, when we started doing this long enough ago that cloud didn't really quite exist. So did you have backups? Did people even know what they were supposed to do? I mean, that was one of the biggest difficulties that we found, was people didn't know what other people were supposed to do, and I operate on the hit by a bus theory. If I get hit by a bus, can somebody take over and do what I'm doing? And so I think that was the biggest thing that we saw during COVID, was that there were these incredibly successful businesses that really didn't have a grasp as to their day-to-day functions and what it took to get them going. And it was clearly something that was very challenging to everybody. I love the ones that transition, like, I'm just south of Tennessee. Like I said, I'm in Atlanta, and the big distilleries in Tennessee that couldn't produce their alcohol produced hand sanitizer. I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world, right? So they kept their doors open, they kept their people employed, and they provided something that people needed. And now, of course, they're back to alcohol, because that's what we really need. But yeah, they knew this is what we need to do to keep things going.
Well, it's that kind of mindset. And I'm not going to, I certainly don't think I'm a prophet, but I think you read in my book about annual planning sessions we were running in 2017, right. 2018, 2019. And I remember saying to people, and the book came out before COVID, what are we going to do if an earthquake happens, a tsunami, some kind of natural disaster? And I'll give a shout out to Dutch Bros Coffee and the CEO of Arizona, Josh Hayes. During their annual planning session, we looked at each other and we said, okay, what if it's torrential heat? What if it's monsoon rains that wipe out these stores? And we developed a SWOT. And a lot of people don't like the word SWOT, but hey, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? What are maybe some things, some kinks in our armor, some opportunities? And then what are the real threats? The word pandemic did not come up, but a lot of other things did. And Josh and his team were able to put together a 90-day plan for their rocks, and a 1-year plan. Hey, this is where we're going to be by the end of the year, and 3 years. And I remember running these virtual sessions with leadership teams and a bunch of mid-level managers. And by the way, shout out to those kids, because people say millennials, Gen Y, Gen Zs, whatever they are.
Smart kids.
They just want some discipline, accountability. They want a leader that acts like a great parent. Josh was able to funnel his organization to a point that they had their best year, and they've continued to move forward on all that. So we can tackle any obstacle. As my good friend Ryan Holiday says, the obstacle is the way. So get ready for it and figure out how you can overcome.
Right. And let's be honest, it's going to happen. I mean, whether it's something small or something big. And so it's just a matter of making sure that we're ready for it. Can we forecast everything? Absolutely not. But if we've got that good foundation, then we can get through almost anything.
Well, I'll try not to get too deep into my biggest passion is talking to people about, are you the architect of your life and your business? And I think that too many people are just focused with their head down, chopping wood all day long, that they forget what the real purpose is. And they 5 days a week, I'm just going to work my tail off. And I try to flip it on its head and say, there's no way in the world for 5 days a week you can be at your best. Maybe you got 3 days a week you can be at your best. And I call that the red zone. So you're in the red zone for 5 days a week. But you need these, I call them green zone moments, which are buffer days. Credit to Dan Sullivan. So you're preparing and getting ready for the next meeting or the next week. And then you've got to have easy days. And yes, you can tell your boss or your leader or your employees, you need to have those easy days to take care of things when the seas are calm. And if you can build out your week the right way with those kinds of moments, I think it'll make it a lot easier to get what you want for your business and your life.
Well, and that comes back to being an athlete, because an athlete is not doing 100% all of the time. They work, they rest, they have different things that they're doing. So, they've got their hardcore days, then they've got their days of, sitting down and strategically thinking about things. I mean, all of these various things. And I think that really is the great example is athletes are not 100% all the time. And maybe I shouldn't say it that way because they're 100%, but they're a different 100%.
Yeah. Deb, you're getting me all fired up here. It's an interesting thing. When I was going into college, a really great cycling coach grabbed me by the neck and he asked me when I was just going to stop racing to race. Like, Des, what are you talking about?
Yeah, I'm supposed to
here
do
race?
this. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he said, you got it all wrong. He's like, bike racing and life is like a chess match.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to do certain moves.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you need to sit back.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone watches the Tour de France or any kind of cycling race, they'll realize that more often than not, the person that wins the race is sitting in the pack.
They were the dudes in the back that were just drafting, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Des figured out with me, and we'll talk about business one. He figured out with me in cycling that if I could do circuit races that lasted 2.5, 3 hours, that had a hill that was about 4 to 10% grade for a couple kilometers with these hard pitches, I would sit in and then I would go hard. Say, okay, Rusnak, you've got 6 or 7 candles to burn, which is that's when you're going to be at your best. The rest, you're going to sit back and wait. And every once in a while, I want you to, hope you don't want to race this, to kick the snot out of everyone. You can. And then there'll be less competitors at the end.
Right.
And if you look at business or bike racing, it's the same thing. How many candles do you have to burn? And when do you need to take the snot out of everyone else in the race? You can cross the finish line. And you might not always be first, but you're going to be pretty darn close if you've got that kind of plan in place.
Right. Yeah. And let's be honest.
As you can tell,
very few are going to be first. I mean, that's just, and even the guys that are first aren't always first. And so, but it's funny because you talk about Olympic athletes and they always say, silver is the worst medal, right? Who wants to be second best? But second best at that level is incredible. And so, no matter what your industry or your field is, it's okay to not always be first.
Yeah, absolutely. A good friend of mine was the first North American to win a gold medal in Nordic combined. His name is Billy DeMong. And Billy's the first guy to say that his gold medal day was about a 7 out of 10. Now, his teammate, who he was allowed to draft behind, his teammate just went full throttle.
Right.
He had a 10 out of 10 day, but his teammate got the silver and Billy got the gold. Billy's like, you know what? He actually earned this race for me. And they remain great friends to this day. But without second place, Billy wouldn't have got first.
Right. And you can only be first for so long, no matter what it is. Obviously, as an athlete, you're going to get old. You're going to break something. I discovered that I'm related to an Olympic athlete. Not by blood, it's by marriage. And it was really funny because it was one of these things where we were watching the Olympics, and how at the start, and I love the pomp and circumstance of the Olympics. And so at the start, here comes, the flags. Well, here comes the Greece flag. And they said, and here's Katerina Krier. And we all went, excuse me? And she is married to my husband's cousin. But she's a pole vaulter. And it's incredible to watch what she does. And we've kind of watched along the sidelines, obviously. But she's starting to age out. But then she has to have a plan. And I think that is the important thing that we're talking about, that at some point we have to transition to something else, a different product, a different service. I've talked on the program before about Kodak, about Blockbuster, about all those companies that thought we're going to be on top of the world forever. And then thud, right? And
Yeah.
they refuse to change. And I think that is the other thing that it needs to be part of our planning is, okay, when the life cycle of whatever it is that we do has run its course, then what are we going to do?
Oh boy, Deb, you're getting me fired up here because you've got to have a bigger purpose in your life.
Right.
You know, with Schoollogic, yeah, Apple realized what we were up to and they kind of came after us. Power School came after us. All these people started coming after us. We retooled. And there was a point where I said, no, boss, I don't think I've got the G and the ability to continue to push forward. And we decided it was time to exit. The interesting thing was, I realized we just didn't have it in ourselves anymore. You know, it's not, let's stay away from Aaron Rodgers, but let's talk about someone like Wayne Gretzky, who,
right.
Wayne Gretzky, who I actually
He's a
admire.
goat. Yeah, he is a goat.
So he's like, I don't have it in me anymore. I didn't have it in me anymore with Schoollogic. And GolfNow, I wasn't able to give it the right time. And, you know, Brett and others were way smarter than I was. It's time to get out. And the people that helped me turn around my businesses said, Rusnak, you're a better coach than you are a business CEO or a chief revenue officer. Maybe you need to dig into this coaching thing. And the crazy thing is my coaching career over the last 15 years has had some interesting ebbs and flows. There's different tools we bring in, different dynamics, and different things we need to focus on. So I need to be self-aware of that as well. And I might be a coach, but I still have a coach. I still have a mentor. Shout out to Mike Mueller. Just spent 4 days in Park City with him. And I have an accountability partner, and excuse my French again, that isn't afraid to stick a fork in my back saying, you think you're doing this, but I'm seeing something different. So we've got to have those people helping us along the way.
Right. You know, and like you said, they don't go away. You don't reach a level and then not need them. You know, it's funny. So I'm 2 hours, I'm 3 hours from Tuscaloosa. So the GOAT, the true GOAT. I mean, you know, when Nick Saban announced his retirement, obviously it took the world by surprise. But one of the things that he said was, I just couldn't do it at that level anymore. And, you know, for one thing, it takes a heck of a lot of self-awareness to say, I'm not going to keep pushing it. You know, and now, was he happy that they hadn't played for a national championship? Yeah, that was part of it. But they were at that level. So it wasn't that, you know, all of a sudden they're bottom of the SEC. You know, he knew. And I think that's where we see so many businesses fail, is people just refuse to say, it's time. You know, I need to be out. I need to do something different, whatever it is, you know, because there's all these expectations, right? You know, you've got family, you've got employees, you've got all these people who are saying, Scott, you got to keep running this business. We rely on you. You can't leave us. Yeah. But they're often better off if you do.
Yeah. And then the evolutionary process of an entrepreneur to realize, is it time to go or is it time to stay? Now, with that, I'm going to give another shout out to Clint Johnson, who runs an amazing business in Phoenix, Arizona, Profitable PPOS. He helps dental groups really define what they need from their business. And the one thing Clint has gone through with me and himself personally over the last couple of years, all these people wanting to buy him or do different things. And he realized that his passion is his business, but his lifelong dream is to be a teacher and to build these online resources and grow his community. We had a really cool check-in call today, and he's realized his next evolution is this training module, this training part of his business. And it'll allow him to live a life to not only travel with his amazing wife, run a great business, have great staff and great clients. So there's got to be a shift in that evolutionary process for any business owner or athlete.
Right.
So, you hit the nail on the head.
Oh, yeah. So I interviewed a young man a week or so ago, and his program will actually air after yours. But he has his own website development company in Kiev, Ukraine. So that right there was just incredible. But it was a phenomenal interview, but he now has like 70 employees and all of this. And so my question to him was, okay, you've got all of these employees. And so what you wanted to do was design websites and all that, and you don't get to do that anymore. And he said, the day I fired myself as the creative director was the day that I could take the next role in my job. And I mean, it was kind of hard to tell his age. I'm assuming, late 20s and in a war zone, holy schmoly. But yeah, I mean, he recognized that he had to change what he was doing in order for him to take that next step.
Well, two things are going to happen after this podcast. I'm Ukrainian. I didn't tell you that. So you need to connect me with him.
Oh, he was phenomenal. Oh my gosh. Yep. I will definitely do that.
Yeah, good. And then I'm going to bug him. He's in second place if I'm before him.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, it was, and it was so interesting because he talked about his passion for designing websites and what he brought to the process and everything. But then I could tell he loved being the boss, right? That was, he found, which is obviously very hard for some people. They don't want to be doing the hiring, the firing, the accounting, all of those things. So of course the smart thing is they hire better people to do those. But yeah, he loved the fact that he was able, and he said, now here was the important thing. He hired somebody who was a better creative director than he had been. And how many times do we see businesses falter, even fail, because that owner, that CEO, that whoever doesn't have the foresight to say, you know what, there's somebody better out there.
Well, we all know there's always somebody better out there. And
admitting it's hard.
There's a lot of people better than me, for sure.
Me too.
The one tool I take all my entrepreneurial leaders through is a tool we call the Delegate and Elevate checklist. Little credit to Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, but we formulated this tool by really getting people to dig into what they love to do and what they're great at. And really look at that on a professional and personal level. And then look at what you like to do and you're good at. More of a list, professionally and personally. And then there's two more columns. The I like to do, but I'm not so good at it. And then the I don't like it and I'm not good at it. And when we go through this exercise to really find their unique ability, and over the 3, 6, 9, 12 months, they get to know themselves better. They can talk to their team and they can start to realize that maybe they shouldn't be the boss or they're not good with admin. And they pull themselves out of the equation. I try to do that every day. I try to delegate something that I'm not good at to someone else. And my assistant, Melissa, and some other people in my life help level me up.
Right.
Much like my good friend Joseph, who got me on this podcast. What a wonderful human being. So we've got to have these who's around us.
Right.
If we're always thinking, how am I going to do it? How am I going to do it? You're not going to get there. Who's going to help you get there? If you can find a better creative director, God bless our friend in Kyiv.
Right. Yeah. It's funny. I've been working on a huge volunteer project and running myself ragged. Right. And several people, not just one, several people said, you know what? You have really, really good people who have offered to help you. Honor them by allowing them to do what it is that they're going to be better at and delegate. And it's been hard because I am one of those people that my way is the only way. And I'm the only one that can do it right. Right. And so it's like, well, they might do it different. They might do it the same way, but they might do it different. And heavens to Betsy, they might actually do it better. And so I think that is one of the challenges when we are that leader, to recognize them. But I loved it when somebody said, honor them by letting them do it.
Who, not how. And back when I was working along in Schoollogic trying to get it somewhere, my mother would ask me from time to time, seems like you're a drug dealer. You're here all the time. Your kids are here. Like, how did you pull this off? Well, I get to do what I love. I work with people I love working with. And those people, I realize they're better at it than I am. And I'm just going to get in the way. And my highest and best use right now is to hang out with you, Mom, and for you to get to know your grandkids and
Mhm.
my amazing wife. So
Mhm.
here I am. And it just gave me all this freedom to make a real big
Mhm.
difference in the world. It's pretty
Right.
cool.
Right. And it is, it is about building that team and having those plans and doing those things. And I was fascinated reading your book because you talk about the three levels of people who are around us. And so talk to us more about that because that was very cool. And I loved that part because we all think, oh my God, we have to either have nobody around us or as many people as we can possibly have. But
Oh
you talk,
boy.
and I love that you talk about there are three different levels.
Well, we might need to take this to another podcast, but
I
I'll do
know
it
because
real.
that's a very detailed thing.
It's deep.
Hmm.
I figured out my inner circle of life
Hmm.
by going and listening to a talk by a British anthropologist named Robin Dunbar. So
Hmm.
shout out to Mr.
Hmm.
Dunbar,
Hmm.
Dr. Dunbar. And in his talk, which is pretty amazing, and I'll keep it down to 30 seconds, he basically said you've got three concentric circles in your life.
Hmm.
The first is a small circle of people who know you, they love you, you can pick up the phone
Hmm.
at 2 a.m, they know your values, they probably know you better than you know yourself.
Hmm.
You're probably in touch with them every day or two. So for me, it's my wife, it's my two kids, it's my mom, and it's my mentor and my
Hmm.
coach. So, hey, there's the six. Okay, so I
Hmm.
broke the rules, now it's six. Then he said there's about 12 to 15 other people
Hmm.
who you stay in touch with maybe every week.
Hmm.
Maybe it's once a month. You go on deep,
Hmm.
meaningful trips with you. You engage. You've got great
Hmm.
relationships with them. And those 15 people, again, they know you better than
Hmm.
you know yourself. You might not live with them, but they're
Hmm.
there. So five, then 15.
Hmm.
And then Dunbar said that the next number is about 150 and no more.
Hmm.
Throw away Facebook and LinkedIn with these 10,000
Right.
followers. This next bigger group, and he went into medieval times and said,
Hmm.
once these groups get bigger than 150,
Hmm.
all kinds of bad things would happen,
Hmm.
crime and mischief and
Right. It's
all the
just too
rest.
big to manage.
Too big. So I really got clear. And it's funny, before this podcast, I didn't know we were going to bring it up, but there's my little concentric circles I was
Hmm.
thinking about. Mine are 5, 18, and 38. And
Hmm.
that math we can talk about later,
Hmm.
but I am a bit of an introvert.
Hmm.
And I really need to have control of my own time
Hmm.
and the people in my life.
Hmm.
And it just makes things so much easier.
Hmm.
So there you go.
Right. And even, you've probably gotten the feeling just in our short time together. I'm pretty social. But when
Yeah.
I think about those numbers, they're still pretty small, because it's not how many people am I connected with on Facebook or, any of those things. And I remember years ago, Bob Berg, who I love Bob Berg. He is, I
Yeah.
love his
Yeah.
wisdom. And one of the things that he said somewhere along the line was that there are about 150 people who will come to your wedding or your funeral. And so it's that same concept that there's,
Yeah.
150 is about where we max out. And even at that, that's a lot, right? If you're trying to remember 150 birthdays, anniversaries, thank God for Facebook, right? Because it tells us these things. But 150 really is a lot to have to manage. And so I think a lot of people really it's going to be 50-ish, maybe
Yeah.
100 at the most. But I think it's also the other two levels are also very important. How many times do we try and make our inner circle too big, and then we can't
Mm-hmm.
please everybody, and nothing gets done, and then and so it's really about focusing. And I love how in your book you talk about you keep those numbers in mind with a lot of what you do. You're going to make sure that those 5 or 6 people in your inner circle get you at your peak time for them. And the
Yeah.
people who are in your other circles, they get you at the peak time for them. And I just
Yeah.
love that because I think we're just so scattered and, we don't ever stop to think about all of this.
What my inner circle allows me to do and my core values allow me to
Mm-hmm.
do is say no to the wrong
Mm-hmm.
opportunities
Mm-hmm.
and yes to the right
Yep.
opportunities. And everyone thinks they're in the tech business or the coaching
Mm-hmm.
business or the skiing business or whatever
Mm-hmm.
it may be. No, you're not. You're in the people
Right.
business.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take care of the most important people and
Mm-hmm.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you're never going to get what you want.
Right. And taking care of yourself really is got to be number one.
Self care is not being selfish.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And And again, we try and serve everybody. And, I am a marketing person at heart. And so one of the people, and by training, and so one of the things I always ask people is, who's your target audience? And they'll smile at me and they'll say, everybody. No, you know, there's probably no company that their target market is everybody, right? Starbucks knows high-end coffee drinkers with disposable income, right? When it costs you $6 to $10 to buy a cup of coffee, you're not going to be, the person that can't afford that. Walmart knows who they are serving. And along the same lines, Nordstrom's, Macy's, they know who they're serving. So we have to know who our target market is in order to do that. And that kind of fits in with those circles. Are we serving the right number of people, as opposed to let's try and make everybody happy, and then nobody's happy.
Well, Deb, I'm going to segue back to that delegate and elevate checklist. When you know your unique ability and you know thyself, and you really put it out there, those are the people you're going to end up working with.
Right.
And within our coaching community, people are like, how can we always end up with these really cool, adventurous people that want to take annual planning trips to Tahoe? Or I was just with Mark Rohde and his team from Mar Residential in Durango snowmobiling. Next week, I'll be in Los Angeles having a blast with EAI Water. Well, in my life, I love hanging out with athletes and adventurous.
Right.
I want to have conversations with business owners who are like, hey, we've got a lot in common. And then off we go. We just hit it off.
Right.
And I can't fake it. So off we go.
We attract those people who match our interests.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love that back to this, absolutely has to be a plan. We can't just muddle through our lives. And I'm going to go back to the title of your book, which is, I had to find it here, The Entrepreneurial's Field Guide, which that sounds great. But then the next part is the important part, obviously, right? It's design your life before someone else does it for you. So how did you come up with that part? Because that is obviously the important part.
At a young age, I lost a handful of friends through a tragic accident. And I don't want to go through all the details. But talking to their parents and talking to a lot of other people, they said, Scott, you've got a really cool opportunity to really do some cool things. And teachers, mentors, and coaches, they helped me design some things into my life. And as I started to work through that into my 30s and 40s, I knew that I needed to be the architect. And then I just figured out I've got to design my life before someone else does it for me. Right. It was based on all those learnings I've had through my life. So it's become a big deal. The other part that's really important to me, Deb, is I never wrote a book to sell the book. So if you've got listeners and that they want to email me, I'd be thrilled to send them the PDF of the book.
And it's a great book. I had a great time reading it.
Okay, good. Well, I'm fishing for 5-star reviews, but that's another story altogether. But but I don't need to make $19.99, on a book. I'd rather change someone's life and give them a real shot to become the architect as well. So reach out, I'll send it out to you.
Right. And I'm, it is that premise of somebody else will do it for you. So somebody else will either do it. You might think I've got the greatest product in the world, but it's not perfect, or it's not. Well, then somebody else does it, right? Or more importantly, how many times have we done whatever it is in our life because we were told that we needed to be doing that? And those the little Jiminy Crickets that we have on our shoulders, and it's funny when I talk about this a lot on the program, those people in many cases mean well by saying, like the people who told me, Deb, you are not an athlete. I kept trying, I really did keep trying, but, or you shouldn't go into math, or you shouldn't go into science, or, gee, you seem like you shouldn't be a good public speaker. Again, they're trying to protect you. Maybe they're thinking more about what happened to them, and things like that. But we have to be the architect of our life. And sometimes that's very scary. And sometimes it goes totally against what other people think we should be doing.
Absolutely. There's so many people that go to a high school reunion or a college reunion or a wedding. Like, boy, you've changed. And everyone else stays the same.
Mm-hmm.
And human beings, it's every 6 or 7 years, every tissue in our body changes.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So it's okay. You get reinvented by
Mm-hmm.
by God, by
Mm-hmm.
nature.
Mm-hmm.
So why not take a shot? And we talked
Mm-hmm.
earlier about business lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
and the life cycle of a human being. Why can't you reinvent yourself
Mm-hmm.
every 5, 6, 7,
Mm-hmm.
8 years? It's okay.
Right.
It's okay to run a software business. It's okay to try to go to the Olympics.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to be a business coach.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you want to own a
Mm-hmm.
pizzeria, but just have a plan.
Right.
So become the architect of your life.
Mm-hmm.
And when I talk at conferences or do big events, I start with that.
Mm-hmm.
I ask people to take a minute and really think about who is the architect of their life.
Mm-hmm.
Their wife, their mother, their kids,
Mm-hmm.
their boss.
Right.
Because you're not ready to take the most important elements of your life
Mm-hmm.
under your own control,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not worthy of the achievement. It's
Mm-hmm.
just going to be luck.
Right.
So why not build out a plan and
Mm-hmm.
have a real
Mm-hmm.
good shot at getting there?
Mm-hmm. Right. And it's our life. Why shouldn't we be the people in charge of it? But that's not the way we were taught. And it's interesting because we of course want to please other people, but
Mm-hmm.
we also have to, authenticity is one of the words, the buzzwords that has
Mm-hmm.
really come about in the last couple of years
Yeah.
about being authentic to yourself. And it was funny because we were talking about millennials. And most millennials are at a job for a couple years now. And because they're going, okay, I've done this, I've mastered this, now I'm going on to the next thing, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And my generation is the nope, you have to have a job until you get that gold watch. And
Yeah.
and my parents were definitely like that. I mean, I have kind of changed jobs here and there and things like that. And my dad,
Yeah.
bless his little heart, who stayed at the same job for 30 some years, he couldn't understand that. And he would say, well, what was wrong with it? And which then of course implied what was wrong with me. And so, but he supported me. I mean, he's been gone for a while, but yeah, and it's not, oh, I just want to make myself happy. That is part
Mm-hmm.
of it, but it is
Yeah.
more what am I going to do where I can bring the greatest good to myself and to others. Oh my
Well,
goodness, we got philosophical.
oh, I love it. Well, then let's go to my friend Simon Sinek
Mm-hmm.
and
What
think
is your
about his
why?
work.
Mm-hmm.
And if you read deeply into that book, hopefully
Mm-hmm.
it helps people find their purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And I've chunked down a bunch of that in my book
Mm-hmm.
as well,
Mm-hmm.
helping people figure out where do they want to live,
Right.
what do they want to do, and
Mm-hmm.
why are they doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And with help from my coach, my
Mm-hmm.
mentor, my why became pretty simple.
Mm-hmm.
It's to ensure that each and every person I come in touch with leaves in a better place than I found them.
Mm-hmm.
And the crazy thing about that why is it challenges me not to get mad at the flight attendant because the flight's late,
Mm-hmm.
or the pizzeria waiter at the
Mm-hmm.
pizzeria who brings me a salad
Right.
instead of the hamburger or the
Mm-hmm.
pizza. Everybody's doing their best, and
Mm-hmm.
it's my job to leave them in a better place than I found
Right.
them. It doesn't mean I'm going to walk around the world patting everyone on the back,
Mm-hmm.
but it makes me realize I've got to raise the bar,
Mm-hmm.
at least on my side.
Mm-hmm. Right. And be grateful. That's the other thing. And you talk about that in your book. And we didn't even get to touch a lot of the stuff that I was going to, talk about. And so we do have to have you on again. I think gratitude is one of the things that is so overlooked by people, and I'm guilty of that, but at the same point, it's, what are we grateful for? I've had major health issues. And so one of my things that I tell people is, you know what? I'm really glad I ain't looking up at 6 feet of dirt. And that's a joke, but it's true. I mean, and things could always be worse. Things could be better, right? But it's, what are we grateful for? I mean, I just had an hour's worth of fantastic conversation. That's a great thing to be grateful for. And so, yeah, have a little gratitude in your lives.
Well, I'll challenge the listeners when they wake up the day after listening to this to lay in bed for about 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And while you're laying in bed, I want you to think about all the people who have helped you to get to where you are
Mm-hmm.
right now. I don't care if you're at the lowest of low, you're at a spot that's probably a lot better than our friend in Kyiv who's in a war zone.
Mm-hmm.
So, teachers, coaches, friends, your parents. And I find if you can have a little bit of that mindset of
Mm-hmm.
who am I grateful for, a little
Mm-hmm.
bit of gratitude, you're probably going to take your first step out of bed and realize you've probably got a great partner, a great spouse,
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of great friends. It just helps a lot.
Right. I love it. Well, oh my gosh, Scott, we really are out of time. This is why I set the timer, because otherwise we'd be going forever. Tell people how they find you and what are the services that you provide.
They can find me on my website. It's really creative. It's scottrusnak.com. So
Woo!
I'm sure you'll put it in the
Mm-hmm.
show notes.
Yep,
How
it'll
to
be
find
linked.
me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an executive coach and I'm an expert EOS implementer.
Mm-hmm.
I work with leadership teams,
Mm-hmm.
helping them get a grip on their business and help them get everything they want from their lives.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. You've got a great website. It's got all sorts of good information. And we've been talking about the book. I mean, the book really it was a fast read, but a lot of very good, thought-provoking information in it. I made it a fast read because I needed to prepare for this, but for somebody who is using it as the tool that it needs to be intended for, they're going to spend a lot of time on it because you had things in there that they have to complete and all sorts of things. So it's a great book. And again, it's called The Entrepreneur's Field Guide, and we'll have a link to it in the show notes. Thanks, Deb. And big fonts. I want it to be easy to read. I know it was, these old tired eyes were happy about that. Yeah. Well, Scott, like I said, we really are going to have to talk again. But until then, do you have any final thoughts that you want to leave everyone with? Just make sure you're the architect of your own life. Take control of the most important elements, and you'll probably get there. I love it. Short and sweet. Wonderful, wonderful. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having so much fun having a great discussion with Scott Rusnak. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.